Thanks to Lou there and Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver for speaking with us. Now let's get some reaction from the line. With us this week is attorney Laura Sanchez. Always good to have her. Reporter at New Mexico Political Report, our man Andy Lyman is with us as well. And line regular Merritt Allen of Vox Optima Public Relations joins us as well. Thank you all. Now we know this was all over a perceived distrust of election voting machines, despite the fact that the machines have been audited many times and proven to accurately count votes. Now, 2 of the 3 commissioners gave in to the Supreme Court's order to certify the election, but Commissioner Couy Griffin dissented, even while saying he had no evidence of problems or factual basis for questioning the results of the election. Now, Merritt, is this just a PR stunt timed around the January 6th hearings, possibly, or do these commissioners really think they're standing for their citizens? How are we supposed to perceive this from the outside looking in here?
What I find so upsetting, and what I suggest to anyone watching who's got concerns about the Dominion voting machines, every county before every election holds a public test of the voting machines. Mm-hmm. And anyone can go and examine the machines and be part of the tests and examine the ballots and address any concerns then. And this is before early voting starts. Mm-hmm. This is the time to go and examine the process and raise your concerns. And if you have a complaint about the validity or the accuracy of the system or the processes, this is the time to raise it. If you did not go to that public test, I think you need to sit down and shut up. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. And so to wait until the results are in and just decide, I don't have a good feeling about this because some guy told you something about some gobbledygook about manipulating statistics, mm-hmm. You need to stand down. Yeah. It's as simple as that. And I want to applaud the Torrance County Commission, 3 Republicans also, who, despite members of the public coming in and shouting at them to not certify the results, resisted that pressure and voted unanimously to certify the results of their primary.
Mm-hmm. Andy, I mentioned 2 votes were yes, 1 was no. That was Couy Griffin. Let me read you an interesting quote from him. From Commissioner Griffin, quote, "My vote to remain a no isn't based on any evidence. It isn't based on any facts. It's only based on my own gut feeling, my own intuition, and that's all I need," end quote. Interesting. How are we supposed to feel as a constituent when you've got, your elected commissioner saying, you know what, I just don't think this is right in my gut? How are folks supposed to handle that?
I can't speak for constituency sure. in Otero County. I'm not actually, I've obviously been there plenty of times. I'm not, in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about him saying that is shortly after he said that, he sort of took aim at reporters and the quote media for calling it unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud. Mm-hmm. He said, "We've just substantiated it here." That's not a direct quote, but he said, look, we've substantiated it in Otero County right after he said that he doesn't actually have any facts or anything like that. And I think to sort of touch on a little bit of what Merritt was saying is that, they had these concerns about the general sense of the voting machines and how things work, not the specific outcome of that election. And I think Merritt's right that there is a way to address those things early on instead of waiting until the last minute. And saying we're just going to hold up this election because we have some general concerns about how our elections are done.
Right. Laura, interestingly, of course, as we all know, Mr. Griffin was sentenced to 14 days time served for his role in the January 6th insurrection. There's no way for us to know this, as Andy just sort of mentioned, but seen as a hero or a criminal amongst his constituents? How does this go down over time? When you think about an elected official, taking this kind of a stance?
Well, I think that the people of Otero County, as a lot of people throughout New Mexico and rural areas, they're good, salt of the earth people. Mm-hmm. I think they are, well aware of, of upholding our laws and being good citizens and are proud to be Americans. And I think when you see some of the behavior that's come out of Mr. Griffin, I can't imagine that everybody just has sort of an immediate, yeah, absolutely, we're behind you kind of reaction. Mm-hmm. I would think that they could see also that some of this is clearly is being done for show. I mean, is trying to, there must be some sort of 15 minutes of fame idea behind some of his actions because they're just so out there. The comment that Andy just made about, him saying about unsubstantiated, maybe he doesn't know what the word substantiated means, because that's the only way I could square what he's saying there. It's disappointing, and it's such a huge distraction from the issues that are going on right now that are affecting a lot of New Mexicans, people at the local level, people statewide. That we still have a bad economy in a lot of places. There's job shortages. There's still people suffering with COVID. We've got a lot of real issues to deal with. And I think these kinds of actions take away from a lot of that, and is very frustrating. So I can't imagine that people are going to look at this later and be prideful about, have pride about what his actions have been. I mean, Otero County's been all over the national news because of these actions.
Yep.
And it's important that we all kind of take a deep breath and move forward. And I'm glad that Merritt brought up and I love that you're so plain spoken, Merritt. That's why I said I love you, because that's we have that reaction, but not everybody says it that way, and she did it very well. But Torrance County, I think it's important to recognize that there are plenty of both sides of the aisle, but there are plenty of Republicans that have certified the election and have faith in their local elected officials, folks that are in charge of the elections. They understand the process. They've been to those, warehouses or wherever the counting is going on, and they have confidence enough to uphold what's being done. Mm-hmm. And both sides of the aisle do this. There's plenty of Democratic majority counties that have to do the same thing when everybody gets elected as Republican. So this is about being part of a process, and it's important to uphold the rule of law. And I feel like everything that has come out of Couy Griffin has not upheld the rule of law, and that's just not the system we have here. If he's going to go with a gut reaction, you could pretty much justify everything. A criminal sentence, the death penalty in a criminal case. You could justify, lynching, racism, all kinds of things because of a gut reaction, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not the system that we have, and I'm glad we don't. He shouldn't be trying to pull us back into, places that we don't want to go back to.
Good point there. Merritt, Laura mentioned something interesting in Otero County. The clerk there was a Republican. Robin Holmes, the quote from her was, "This was a great election with no problems whatsoever." Why didn't that carry any water in the county, having a Republican clerk saying everything's fine here?
And I don't think there are any elected Democrats in Otero County.
Right, exactly.
Trump carried the county in 2020 by 28 points. Mm-hmm. And the desired result from this, that county commission also voted that the general election shall not have voting machines and it shall be a hand count.
Right.
Of the ballots. That's the desired result. I'd like to point out, if their concern is voter fraud, the greatest risk to election integrity in New Mexico is mishandling, misappropriation, misuse of absentee ballots. Mm-hmm. A hand count by poll workers will not weed out fraudulent absentee ballots. They will be read and counted just like a machine would. Mm-hmm. We've had a conviction in 2019 in Rio Arriba County for fraudulent absentee ballots. I'm quite concerned in Grant County, where the voter rolls and voter participation rates are so high. That's something I really think the Secretary of State and county officials need to be looking into. 92% voter registration isn't right. And I think the voter rolls need to be purged. There's something not right in Grant County. This, if you are concerned about election integrity in New Mexico, is where you need to turn your attention, not voting machines.
Gotcha.
And so this is really, truly tilting at a windmill, because a hand count is not going to eliminate fraudulent absentee ballots. Mm-hmm. They will be counted by hand just as they would by a machine.
Good point there. Andy, the previously mentioned Torrance County had their issues with the Sandoval County as well. Protesters jeered commissioners there as well. Again, how do we pull this back to have folks understand that, distrust, you're part of the ferment of distrust here when you walk into these meetings and start jeering commissioners for doing the right thing? Is there a way to fight back that goes beyond going on Rachel Maddow, and arguing your case on national television?
I think it's hard if there is a way to do it. I don't know how to sort of sort of, I guess, as you'd say, change hearts and minds. I think a lot of these people truly believe. I think they've been, so ingrained in sort of their theories and diving, of course, confirmation bias, that all that stuff plays into these ideas that people have, and they're truly convinced that there's something there.
Right.
And so I don't really know how you get people to sort of take a step back and sort of think about things a little bit more logically and clearly, and maybe take in some more facts. I think part of the other problem too is they're not articulating very clearly if they have anything to say about the Dominion machines, right? I think Coy Griffin said he wanted to get in and look at the machines or have an auditor do it, but I don't know who knows what it's supposed to look like in there besides having a modem. And so
an auditor did a public test.
That's right.
There's definitely right ways to do it, as Merritt has mentioned. I don't know how you sort of shift people's focus on this and get them to stop being concerned about, or at least sort of come to it at a different angle. I'm not sure how that's done.
Fair enough. It's a hard thing. The fever's got to break somehow, some way. So we'll see as time goes on. Maybe that's part of the answer. Thank you to our panelists for their reaction to the situation in Otero County. We'll meet right back here at the virtual roundtable in less than 1 minute to talk through some other political developments, this time in the governor's race.